Hey everybody, welcome back to Up the Vibe. I'm your host Joe, and today I'm grateful to have back on the podcast Preston Dennett, who is an author, experiencer, UFO investigator, amongst many other things, and has recently published a book, Out of Body Exploring: A Beginner's Approach, which I have right here. I'll show for those listening. You can't quite see this, but I've recently read the book, and I'm glad to have Preston on. So, how are you today?
Doing well. Yeah, not bad. Can't complain. I do anyway, but no, I'm doing well.
Good, good. I can't believe it was over 2 years ago when we last had you on the podcast. What have you been doing since then? What's been keeping you busy?
Oh, I'm always busy. I work really hard doing the UFO research, paranormal research, just, trying to pay the bills and, of course, maintain the house and all the things that go into living here on Earth.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
difficult, but, it's fun. I'm having a good time.
good, good. Is the workload kind of coming to you in a way that you can control, or is it pretty much whatever comes your way?
It's becoming overwhelming at times, honestly, because I get
Yeah,
contacted by so many people
no,
that I really cannot keep up with them anymore.
it
And
just
I'm really
shows the
having
validity of the topic, really.
exactly.
Yeah,
So many
yeah,
people are having experiences of all kinds. But yeah, I absolutely love doing this research. It's endlessly fascinating, whether it's UFOs or astral projection or even Bigfoot or
yeah,
all these paranormal topics. There's
yeah, yeah.
so much to it.
Do you have any books in the works at the moment? I know you've got, I think you said recently 32 that you've done.
You know I do, Joe.
Yeah.
Always got books in the works. I'm
Yeah.
working right now on a sequel to one of my favorite books that I've put out, Symmetry, which was the story of Dolly Saffron's UFO experiences. So we barely just touched the surface of that. I'm doing interviews with her about more of her experiences,
Hmm.
working on another one about out-of-body experiences, because I've had a lot of that going on
Hmm.
lately.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I've got several books in the works actually.
Yeah. And I guess the last 2 years have been quite interesting in the UFO topic in general, right? There's been the testimony of David Grush, most notably, and many, many other things. I won't go through it all, but what do you feel about the how the topic is growing in terms of public awareness, maybe even getting towards disclosure?
Oh, well, I am excited to see this topic being taken seriously, especially among officials within government. Uh, I was really kind of delighted to hear people in Congress here in the US saying that UFOs are real, there is a cover-up, the Pentagon's not
Hmm.
cooperating. Some of us have
Hmm.
had sightings, but I don't think it's disclosure. I don't think our government will ever willingly disclose. They're still lying.
Hmm.
So I'm of two minds about it, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so excited that it is bringing a whole new crowd of people to this subject,
Hmm.
but it's still the same old song and dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm impatient. I think it's time to
Yeah.
stop this ridiculous cover up, and I just don't see it happening.
Do you think it might happen after the US election? Do you think that might have a bearing? I did see today, I think it was on Fox about the UFO issue maybe being part of the presidential debates.
I would love to see that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I really, really would. And you never know because, you know, we're still waiting for any real, you know, sitting head of state to just spill the beans and let it all out, whether it's going to be the US or France or, England or Canada or
yeah.
Chile,
Maybe Canada.
Brazil.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you
Japan.
know,
Yeah,
yeah, any one of
interesting.
these people could do it at any time and make a real difference.
Yeah,
It hasn't happened yet. So maybe if we can get someone here in the US in office who's, willing to do that, that
yeah.
would be amazing. But I'm not going to hold my breath because I've
No,
held my breath before and never happened.
yeah, yeah. It is one of those things, and I hate waiting for that taxi that's just round the corner. You know, that kind of feeling. Oh, is it there? Is it there? Oh, it's not there. Um, it does get frustrating, and I haven't been in it half as long as you. I've been only what 4 or 5 years now, whereas you've been in it since the 80s, right? So it's a long old time, right? So yeah,
Been a long
but
time.
yeah, but I mean, Trump recently talked about it, and he said it seemed like he wasn't that interested in the topic, but he has heard stuff, which is a bit of a shame, really. And I don't hear anything from Biden as well. So
Well,
yeah,
Trump has definitely said more than Biden. All the
yeah,
presidents pretty much have said one thing or another. It's
mhm,
usually veiled, it's quite subtle.
yeah, yeah,
Trump said that he's not fully a believer. I think he is. But he said he
yeah,
did hear reports from pilots that he finds quite credible. So
mm,
that's something. I
yeah,
mean, it wouldn't take much to just say, yes, it's real. I don't see how that, I suspect that they're warned off this topic, and basically threatened and told, because they're not necessarily fully in the loop. Presidents and Congress people and
no,
people within government. It's from what I can understand, it's the highest levels of the military and the intelligence agencies who are not
mhm,
elected officials.
yeah. I mean, does come down to whether they've got a passing interest in it outside of probably what they're doing as president, whether they want to know more. It's not necessarily that they're going to go in and want to discover everything there is to know about UFOs when they get in. Um,
Yeah. But all it would take is
but
one sentence and it could really spark things up.
yeah, which is they're probably fully aware of that. So it's probably quite obvious that they're going to say obfuscate the question and say, what's the word? Sorry, yeah, just basically lie to put it
Obfuscate.
politely.
That's the key word right
Yeah, yeah,
there.
exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah. So I wanted to bring you on to discuss primarily about out of body exploring. It's something that I've been interested in, something I've been trying. And I heard you on with Grant Cameron recently, and it was a great podcast and full of information. So I wanted to dive a bit deeper. I've got a ton of questions, so hopefully I can get through them all. But yeah, so firstly, I mean, you've described it in the book, but for those listening, do you want to go through the kind of the lead up to your first out of body experience and what that was like?
It wasn't really anything I was ever expecting or looking for. It ended up being something I did pursue
Hmm.
through, circumstance. When my mom passed away, I was 19 years old. She was 49, so it was very unexpected. She had a heart attack. We all pass on at one point,
Hmm.
but this was never really discussed in my family. What, that this could happen. Uh, and when it did, it hit us all like a ton of bricks, I think. Uh, Certainly me. I'm five of six kids, so there's quite a number of us. And I was 19. I have a younger sister, and the rest are older than me. So they were, perhaps a little bit more prepared in terms of life experience. But it was about 2 weeks after she passed that we were holding a service at a friend's house. And my dad's driving up in the car, and I saw my mom sitting in the front seat. Of course, my first thought is, I'm hallucinating. Must be so delirious with grief that I am hallucinating. But I paid attention because he drove right up next to me. And so I was just feet away, and my that was my mom. I could see her.
Hmm.
I mean, she has a very certain posture. She's a very elegant, graceful woman. And then she just kind of pixelated, disappeared away. And I thought, wow, I'm never telling anyone this because I'm going crazy. And there are people on both sides of me, and they're not saying anything. So I'm not going to say anything.
Hmm.
I'm still a teenager, 19, yes, but a young teenager
Hmm.
in terms of life experience, perhaps. So that's how it kind of started. And it was about a year after that I started having these really odd dreams. And I'll call them dreams. I think they're probably actual visitations by my mom. Because what would happen is I would wake up when someone walked into my room, sit up in bed, and it was my mom. And she's standing there, she's smiling at me, she's trying to let me know everything's all right. She's not talking, but I'm getting the message. Like, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm fine. You don't have to worry. And then I would suddenly wake up for real. So this was a false awakening. initially. I thought, gosh, that's weird. I could have sworn I was awake.
Yeah.
I could have sworn that was her. And it happened over and over and over and over, 20, 30 times. And I was starting, I was devastated to the point where I was, crying myself to sleep, crying when I woke up. I was best friends with my mom.
Hmm.
So it
Yeah.
was very difficult. And I think she was really trying to help. But it just created a kind of a quandary because now I'm thinking
Yeah.
I'm going crazy. Because I know this is her. You can just know by the quality of a person's presence when they're
Hmm.
with you. And I just knew on some level it was her. But on the other hand, mentally, thinking, no, can't be her. There's no such thing as life after death. When we die, we're just, dust. We're worms. We're gone.
Hmm.
So I was at a crossroads and and I didn't know what to do. So I started asking, my family wasn't really, they're all, lost in their own grief. So they weren't much help, honestly. So I am just trying to figure this out for myself. And I picked up books on dreams, and they didn't really have the answers. There was some indication that the deceased can visit you in the dream state, but most of these books were not very good. I ended up throwing a lot of them away because they were just, I found out, inaccurate. Because I started doing my own studies on dreams. I literally wrote down every dream I've ever had and started interviewing everyone. Can I talk to you about your dreams? And I started getting a handle on what the dream state is. And it's
Hmm.
not what most people think it is. The deceased can visit you in your dreams. Many, many people report this. And I heard about lucid dreaming, of course, and that is essentially a form of out-of-body experience. But you are hallucinating. You're in a dream, but you're awake in the dream. You're fully awake, just as you are now, but you are dreaming. And I tried so hard to achieve that through, the exercises that were given in just the two or three books I could find on this. And I couldn't really do it. It wasn't working for me. So I'm still struggling with this until I picked up Robert Monroe's book, which is called Out of Body Journeys. And he followed it up with a couple of others. And boy, what a good book. And a little scary, honestly. He
Hmm.
described his own experiences with this subject, which he learned to do following, a heart attack. Was taking sleep learning tapes. He was experimenting with anesthesia and started having these experiences.
Hmm.
And boy, did he describe them vividly. And I believed him. It was a very sincere book. And he said, anyone can do this. I thought, wow, okay. This would be a great way for me to find out, is my mom visiting me? Is there life after death? Where is she?
Hmm.
This is some, I love the idea of being able to bring the paranormal into a laboratory setting, so to speak. You study it firsthand instead of, talking to other people. So I started doing these exercises, which in a nutshell are relaxation exercises, physically, mentally, and also affirmations and visualizations, this kind of thing. And it worked. It worked really well. I was meditating about an hour per night or so, and my dream recall in the first week doubled. And it was so vivid. I would think I was awake, I'm wandering around. And of course, then I would wake up and realize, well, I wasn't awake. And it happened about my first experience, about a month into it, a month and 3 weeks, 2 weeks.
Is this
I,
when you're in your early 20s now, would you say? Or a bit later?
yeah, I would say I was 21.
Hmm.
Yeah, at 21, right when I started investigating UFOs,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
same
Yeah.
time, which was 1986.
Hmm.
So this
Hmm.
was a lot for me to handle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, because, I'm telling everyone in my family, UFOs are real. And they're like, no, they're not. You're crazy.
Yeah.
Stop talking about UFOs. And then I had my first out of body experience. Same time, all this is going on. I'd gone into my room one day to just lay down. And I laid down on my stomach on my bed. This was during the day. And all of a sudden, my whole body started to vibrate violently. And I was paralyzed. Now, if I had just kind of had a presence of mind, I would have realized what was happening. Because Robert Monroe talks about this. He says,
Hmm.
you want to relax to the point where you feel what's known as the vibratory state. He says it's like a mild electric shock. I was not experiencing a mild electric shock. It was violent. It was very
Right.
strong. I thought I was being electrocuted, actually.
Wow.
Thought I had stuck my finger in the light socket next to my bed and that I was going to die because I was being electrocuted. And it just got stronger and stronger, and waves of energy are pulsing up and down my body until boink, I pop out of control. And I'm not like spinning head over heels, but I am flying across the room with no control whatsoever and into the hallway and into the restroom. And then I became vertical and I stood up and I grabbed the sink and I looked into the mirror and I realized what was happening because I couldn't see myself. I'm like, I'm out of body. I am doing this. I'm absolutely doing this. And I cannot tell you this, the feeling of absolute revelation, enlightenment. But my whole worldview went right out the window in 1 second. I knew right then and there is life after death. I knew
Yeah.
it
It seems
because I
like a
was out
real
of body.
stark contrast to that feeling of being electrocuted only moments earlier.
Yeah. And I was really happy. I was so happy. Like,
Yeah.
wow, this is amazing. And I got so excited, I got pulled right back in. And I'm like, going back into, and there was someone in my room. I remember being so shocked. I'm like, well, who's that? And I couldn't see them because my vision wasn't quite fully there. But I saw somebody. And they were short. They couldn't have been more than 5 feet tall. Never did find out who it was. But went vertical or I mean horizontal over my bed and slowly lowered back into my body, kind of clicked into it and woke up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I have to try this again. And the same exact thing happened 1 week exactly later on a Saturday. And then a couple of days later, I woke up in the middle of the night and I'm standing next to my bed and it's pitch black. It's the middle of the night and I've got vertigo. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? And I finally kind of just shook my head and stood up and got my bearings. And I'm like, okay, I'm awake. I'm standing in the middle of my room. I must have crawled out of bed. What am I doing? And I looked down on my bed. And no, I had not crawled out of bed. I was still in there. And I just about died of fright. I thought I had died, actually. I
Mm.
I was terrified. There's this
Yeah.
weird cold dread that comes over you, or came over me when I saw this. And I'm like, oh no. So I dived back into my body. And it was the weirdest feeling because I had to, how would I put this, like wriggle into it. It was like putting on a suit, right?
Mm.
And I was wriggling into it and I pushed my hands down into where my arms would be and my legs, my head, and I had to kind of click into it like a jello mold.
Mm.
And finally I got it. And I woke up, almost forgot what happened too. I woke up, I'm like, oh gosh, what happened? And then I remembered, I'm like, oh, I wasn't scared anymore. I was happy. This was the third time. So
Mhm.
now I knew I could reproduce this.
Mhm.
And I doubled down and I did it. I did it pretty much every weekend from this point on because I could sleep late. Because I'm going to college, right? I am working full time, well, almost full time. So I am really spread thin here. And I'm doing UFO research. And I'm dealing with my mom's death. Now this is coming up. And of course, I told my family, we're a very close family, always open. I'm unfiltered. And they're like, oh, stop talking about out of body experiences. You're not going out of body. I'm like, yes, I am. Stop it. You're going off the deep end. I'm like, no, 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 no. You don't understand. This is real. So I wasn't getting a whole lot of support from them. My sister-in-law, she's like, oh, this is real. You're okay. My brother, Mark, he had seen a UFO. So I got some support, but most, they just weren't really interested and they had their own things to do.
Yeah.
But man, oh man, I was gonna do this and I was gonna get good at it if it took all my energy. So I kept meditating and I would go out each weekend and I'd pop up for about, I'd pop out and be like, I've done it. I get, yay. And I would get so excited, I'd get pulled right back in.
Mhm.
I learned a lesson that strong emotion will pull you back into your body. Fear, anger, emotion, any emotion. It's called the desire body, the astral body.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all have this astral body, all of us. It's called the emotional body, the astral body, the dream body. Call it what you want. We have it. And I had to learn to just calm down. And that took me so long. That took me months and months and months, almost a year. But finally, one time I did it. I'm like, okay, I'm out. Calm down. You're okay. And I stood there in my room, looked over, there I am under the covers. And I'm like, okay, let's walk through the wall. And of course, I'm in the middle of the room and I'm floating like a spider. I can't, and I'm trying to flap my arms to fly, and
Hmm.
I'm trying to clear my vision. I had to do a lot of trial and error. And finally, I learned it's just willpower. And I willed myself across the room and it worked. Oh, and went through the wall. It started to become very natural. And I would explore the living room early in the morning. So beautiful when you're out of body because everything is imbued with this glowing light. It's a little bit different. It looks, like reality, but it's different. It's eerie. It's, yeah, it's hard to describe, but
Hmm.
everything glows a little bit and it's very peaceful. The peaceful feeling is unbelievable.
And
And
the
I felt
experience
so,
itself, does it feel like your experience now in terms of the visual aspect to it, or is it almost like a projection or on the back of your eyelids? Does it feel like a projection basically in terms of the reality?
no, no, it feels real.
Feels very
It,
real. Yeah.
I mean, there would be times where I'd wonder, am I lucid dreaming or am I having an out-of-body experience?
Hmm.
But you can tell pretty quickly because when it's an out-of-body experience, you're in your normal environment. I later learned it's not necessarily the third dimension you're looking at. It's kind of a reflection of it, or the third dimension rather is a reflection of the fourth dimension, which
Okay.
is where I think you're going to. Uh, but yeah, it took me a while to kind of unpack all of this, and I overcame a lot of people have fear with this. My problem was excitement. And so once I got over that, I'm like, oh, I'm okay. Because the literature I had read was pretty clear that it's as safe as sleeping. You're not going to get hurt. You're not physical. So
Mm.
there's no real danger of, getting locked out or possessed or going too far out or any of that.
Can you touch physical objects or move them?
You can touch them. And it's weird because you can put your hand right through the wall. You can walk through the wall, but you still
Mm.
feel it. And so it's a little more subtle, but you can absolutely feel things.
Hmm.
And I tried so hard to move objects, and to this day have not been able to do it.
Okay.
Though I
But,
know people who
but
can.
right. Okay.
I mean, this is something that is possible to do. I just haven't reached that ability yet. But
Wow.
yeah, I spent that
You've been
first.
through a lot though.
Yeah,
Yeah. So.
I spent that first year just walking around the house, flying above it, going to a neighbor's house or a
Mm.
friend or a family, or just exploring the physical world, going farther and farther out and extending it from, a few seconds to a few minutes to an hour. I still kind of plateau between 10 minutes and an hour, but I've had, all night experiences as well. So it, that's how it all began. Yeah.
Okay. That's a whole hour of not having any thoughts or processes go on which kind of get you back into your body or distract you or make you feel like um you make you realize you're in the out-of-body state. Because yeah, I've heard you say that when you kind of realize you're in the out-of-body state, that's when you often get pulled back in.
Yeah. So if you think about your body, whoosh, you're right back
Yeah.
in. It's very much like skiing or riding a bike or I've never walked a tightrope, but I would imagine that's what it's like.
Mm.
If you've ever played an instrument or if you're in a video game and you're focused, it's a very focused experience. And I learned tricks. I would be like, okay, I'm out of body, I'm out of body, I'm out of body. And I would just
Mm.
focus on that and focus on remembering everything that happened. Because I also learned it's very easy to forget. And if you let your thoughts start wandering, it's very easy to fall right into a dream. And so, yeah, it took a lot of real attention,
Mm.
intention, and focus.
Okay.
But yeah, once you start doing it regularly, it gets progressively easier.
Hmm. So when you say falling into a dream, are you falling into some other reality, or is it the same reality, but your conscious experience is not in that kind of out of body state anymore, and you're more susceptible to forgetfulness because we all have a problem remembering our dreams, don't we?
Yeah, and that's the real problem here. It's like switching channels and you just don't remember. I,
Mm,
and yeah, you can be in an out of body experience and then start thinking about something. And the next thing you know, you're waking up from a dream and you'll still remember perhaps the out of body experience. I came to realize that dreams are real. They are essentially hallucinatory, but that doesn't make it not real because you are experiencing this and you are seeing these things and they
mhm,
persist. I mean, you can go back into a dream that you've left behind. I've done this many times.
mhm,
So people say, oh, it's all just a dream. Well, yeah, but a dream is a real thing. It absolutely exists. So to say it's just a dream is kind of a misnomer because it's something you're experiencing. And frankly, your brain can't even tell the difference often between what's real in terms of what's a dream. And this is the real problem. And one of the barriers is why people can't do this because when we're all out of body every night, we truly are. I've confirmed this. And the reason people don't really realize it is because they're out of body and they're experiencing all these things. It never even occurs to them they're out of body. They think it's real life, or they'll understand that it's out of body and they just aren't understanding that they don't live there the whole time. We're
mhm,
in, we're living in a third dimension and a fourth dimension concurrently, and people move from one to the other, not realizing it. So they're in the fourth dimension, and they're fully aware they're in the fourth dimension, but they have no idea about the third. That's what happened to me. I'd be out of body
mhm,
for so long. Like, okay, I thought that I lived in a world where my mom was deceased, but here she is. We're talking. The whole family's here. I
mhm,
must have been wrong. And I would just forget about it until suddenly you would feel this weird pull. Like, oh gosh, that's my physical body. Oh, I live on Earth.
mhm, mhm.
It's a weird. I was suffering almost culture shock nightly, weekly.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
You,
Coming back, I'm
you,
like, oh, I'm back on Earth again. Oh
you said about the
man.
fourth dimension. Do you have what do you mean by the fourth dimension? Because I don't know if you're thinking of another spatial dimension or you're thinking more of like a fourth density of consciousness, a kind of a higher level or another plane of consciousness, or do you kind of just use that
I
as a
think there's
term?
probably a more accurate terminology because people talk about, oh, we're going out of body, we're leaving our physical body behind and going into an astral body. And if you really research the literature on this, they
Mhm.
talk about multiple bodies. So you have your astral body, your etheric body, which is kind of your aura. There's a physical body, the etheric body, the astral body, and I think it goes mental, emotional. I might have this wrong. Akashic, Buddhic, uh, Atmic. Oh, that's eight. So
Yeah,
got a
yeah.
little gobbled up here, but essentially there are multiple bodies.
Is it
But
12 or 13 or something?
you're
Yeah,
not really going out of body so much as you are moving your consciousness
yeah, into different
through.
states. Yeah.
Yeah. And all of these so-called dimensions are intertwined. They're layered over and inside of each other.
Hmm. Hmm.
Distance here in the third dimension is an illusion, as is, sequential time, because I mean, you get a real sense of this when you start going out of body, because you can travel great distances instantly. And you can visit the past, you can get visions of the future. It's
Hmm.
really cool. So
Yeah.
in effect, you're just sort of moving your consciousness. Yeah, I mean, I think even in mathematics and physics, quantum physics, they talk about different dimensions.
Yeah,
So I think
it's
there's
string
certainly,
theory to proposed this idea of multiple dimensions and some of them
I think
wrapped
there's
up.
reality to that.
Uh,
Yeah.
and there's some people who don't think string theory is the right direction, like what Eric Weinstein, but that is one thing that I do think maybe some supporting evidence um,
Yeah. Well, the
of the
best,
nature of reality.
I cannot encourage people enough to try it. Please don't believe me. Do it yourself and you will
Yeah,
see. Because, oh my gosh, when it happens, it
yeah,
is such a shock. It's like, wow, this is real.
yeah.
Initially, it was very dreamlike. So I'm like, maybe I'm going crazy really off the deep end now. Even though I knew I wasn't, because but you still question reality. And finally, I was able to like go to a place out of body that I hadn't been to. I'm like, this is a perfect opportunity. I'm going to go here physically and verify that this environment that I'm seeing, which was
Mhm.
the LA River, completely encased in cement, right? And I saw soil mounded up on the side, several feet deep and grass growing. I saw bleached out 7-Up cans and bottles and trash. I'm like, well, this can't be real. I'm clearly hallucinating this. This is a cement river. Grass cannot grow here. But it wasn't far from my house. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to go back to my body and I'm going to go here physically. And I did, and I verified it, and it was real. And it was so cool to see something first out of body
Mhm.
and then go there physically.
Yeah.
Because I'm coming around the corner, I'm like, gosh, I hope this is real. I had to park my car, get out of the car, climb down into an area where you're not really allowed to go, but I was going to go there. So I needed to know. And that
Mhm.
got my proof because it's really
Yeah.
hard to prove this to someone else.
Yeah. Do you find you must have a lot of proofs though? I mean, you must have been able to go out of body to various different places and go then drive there, or like you did. You must have several of those, or is it quite unique experience to have that kind of proof between the two worlds?
Uh, in the beginning, it took me a while to do it. Since then, I've done it. Probably one of my favorite times was going to visit someone because I would visit people and they would, of course, never see me. And it was frustrating because you are essentially a ghost. So I'm
Hmm.
hovering in front of my brothers and my sisters. I'm like, hey, hey, hey. And they're just kind of walking right through me or right by me. I'm like, or my friends, I'm like, well, and if you try to describe their house, they're like, well, you already know my house. I'm like, well, that's true, I do. So it was
Yeah.
hard to, prove it to them. It became sort of a useless cause because they were skeptical. It's like, what? You try it and you can prove it to yourself. It's not my job to prove it to you. But yeah, one time I thought, well, I've got this lady. I had actually mentioned her, Dolly Saffron,
Hmm.
the subject of my book, Symmetry. Of course, have interviewed her over and over again. We got to know each other really well, became fabulous friends. Really love her. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to visit her out of body. This should be fun. Because once you know a person and you kind of get a hold of their energy, you can visit them quite easily. You just say, I'm going to visit this person. You set the intention. But I'm in California and she is in Florida. I'm like, well, this should be interesting because I don't think I've ever gone this far. I went to my sister in Colorado. Of course, she didn't see me. And so I pop out of body. It's the middle of the night because this is when I usually do it. I'm like, well, it's the middle of the night there. This is probably, I don't know how this is going to go. But I said, let's go see Dolly. And boom, I'm there, kind of like teleporting. And I come in for a landing and I'm in this dark room and thinking, well, is this a garage? There's a gentleman sitting in a little lawn chair. And I'm looking at him and I walk up to him, I'm like, hey, what's your name? He says, my name's Henry. Or Norm, I forget, Norman. And he's kind of just sitting there looking a little dour and, pensive. And I said, did you happen to know where Dolly is? And he points to the door. And so I look to the door and in walks Dolly. She's on the phone, on the cell phone. And I'm looking at her, and suddenly she spins around and looks right at me. Like, oh my God, I think she can see me. And her eyes go wide, and she speaks to me verbally. It says, I can't talk now. I'm being robbed. And I was, of course, dismayed to hear that. I'm like, oh no, that's terrible. And I had a strong emotion, and that pulled me right back. And we were talking daily on the phone because I'm doing interviews with her. We've become good friends. And she calls me up and she starts talking, like, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing pretty good. How are you? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, she's not mentioning this. You know, maybe she doesn't remember, but I was sure she saw me and getting a little. dismayed when she says, "Oh, you came to me last night. I saw you." You did. So I saw you. I saw you see me. She's like, "Yeah, yeah, I saw you. I was on the phone." I'm like, "That's what I saw. What did you say to me?" Because I wanted verification. And she said, "Well, I turned around. I saw you standing there. You look good." She's like, "Oh, my hair comes back."
All right.
I look real young. We all do. Uh, so I was looking good, and she confirmed that. I'm like, "Hey, thanks." And she says, "Yeah, I was on the phone with my friend, and I saw you." And I said, "I can't talk now. I'm with Rob." I'm like, "Oh, I misunderstood.
Oh, right.
I thought you said being robbed."
Hmm.
And she says, "No, I'm with Rob." I'm like, "Okay, well, that makes sense." But it was verification.
Yeah.
She saw me, and I'm like, "Wow, this is real." That was the first time I've ever been able to get anyone to see me. And
Did she
what's
see
so
you while she was awake, or was she in an out-of-body
Yeah,
state as
no,
well?
she was fully awake.
So was
She was
it
awake in
ghostly?
the middle of the night.
Was it like a ghost that she saw?
No, got abilities like a medium.
Hmm.
So she saw me full on. I don't believe I was an airy apparition or anything. I'll have to
Okay.
ask her that.
Yeah.
But
But you
no,
said about the glowing aura that you see in the world. Was she seeing the similar worlds of your projection, or were you kind of actually almost like being in the room with in your physical form like now?
she saw me in full color,
Full color, yeah.
though not the way I look now. Because when I pop out of body, I regress to a much younger age, uh,
Yeah.
as we all do when we pass on. But it was
It's
so
interesting.
funny.
What age though? Is it the same for everyone? I guess we don't know, do we? I
Well,
guess it's
it can
probably
vary a little bit.
the best one.
Most people will choose an age around 20 or 25,
Mhm.
but you can actually get much younger. I experimented with that because I saw people who had regressed to a young child. I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
And so I tried that and I'm like, "Yeah." And I was a little kid and I'm like 8 years old. I'm like, "Oh, wow, this worked." And my dad, he passed on and he was still looking old. He was having some issues, I think,
Mhm.
uh, with various things that he had done in life, which were holding him back a little bit, perhaps. I don't know for sure,
Mhm.
but yeah, some people will kind of look the way they did when they passed on, particularly if they're still attached to Earth or
Mhm.
issues that they're dealing with. But here's a quick end note to that experience with Dolly, because it's just so funny. It was about a week later. I was lying in bed and something woke me up, and it was my room filling with light. What is going on? So I opened my eyes, and there was Dolly standing there. Now she's out of body, and I'm fully awake.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
and yeah, I can see her as an apparition, but full color. I mean, she looked solid to me and looked really good. We're both not young spring chickens anymore. So, but she looked great, and she was actually glowing with this golden aura that filled my whole room. I'm like, wow. And smiling from ear to ear. It was so funny. I'm like, wow, I cannot wait to tell her this. Of course, she already knew.
Mhm.
She's pretty good at this.
Wow.
We've gone on out of body journeys together.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, you can do that too.
It's surreal, and I wonder if one day there's going to be a lot more of this. There's going to be almost like um, out of body parties, people getting together. Be better than
Yeah.
the metaverse that the Facebook equivalent, the digital
Yeah.
form.
We are already actually doing that.
Mm.
We truly are, because I would pop out of body and I'd go to the other side, and there my mom would be, and we'd talk. Now, this is after she came down, and finally I met her, and she pulled me to the other side and gave me a tour of the heavenly realms, and it was fantastic and
Mm.
really amazing. But I started visiting her regularly because once you go to a place, you can know how to get there. And we're all up there, my whole family, dead and alive.
Mm.
It was confusing because I would, like I approached my brother Steven, who I was really close to. He recently passed, well, a couple of years ago, he passed on, and I had some experiences with that. But at any rate, he's alive, and so everyone, all his kids are alive and they're still up there and we're having a good time. This is really confusing to me. I'm like, Steven, do you realize that we're out of body right now? He's like, yeah. I'm like, you do? He's like, yes, this is the in-between place. I'm like, oh, is that what you call it? This is the astral realms. He's like, oh, okay. I'm like, do you realize that we live on Earth in a physical body? He was kind of like, well, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, then you'll remember this, right? He's like, no. I'm like, well, why not? He says, I don't have that ability. I'm not where you are. I'm like, but here I am talking to you. If I asked you to do it, can't you do it? And he's like, no. And we started arguing. He got mad at me. He's like, just stop, Preston. I don't want to talk about this. I'm not going to remember. Face it. Fine. And of course, he didn't. And I tried with other family members and I tried various techniques. I created a beautiful UFO because you can project a mental image and it will manifest. And I was having the same conversation with my sister Victoria, who, I mean, she's 1 year and 4 days older than me. So we were basically raised as twins almost. We're very close. Thought if anyone can do this, she will. But no, she's like, I'm not going to remember. I'm like, how about I create a UFO? And I did. And did a good job, I must say, because it was a beautiful silver chrome-like UFO with colored lights, a dome on top,
Mm-hmm.
real close. I mean, this has got to be memorable. She's like, wow, that's pretty cool. She did not remember. Nope.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had no success with that. But we're all up there conscious. We're all there having parties, planning out our day, just hanging out. Uh, so it's an interesting thing. It's,
Yeah,
they're just not fully clicking to it for some reason.
seems very much part of the human experience to be disconnected from that reality, and there may be a purpose for it. But it seems like we're going through a phase right now of more and more people experiencing the phenomena, experiencing out of body, experiencing UFOs. Feels like the veil is dropping, and we're moving towards a new phase of reality.
I think it's the way it's supposed to be. I think
Mm-hmm.
we moved away from it unintentionally, or perhaps due to a lot of the violence and aggression and lies and greed and corruption that has
Yeah,
sort of overswept humanity. But honestly,
it's
I really
interesting.
believe this is our natural state and how we're supposed to be, very connected to the other side and remember everything that goes on at night. Because it is absolutely natural. This is
Mm.
not some sort of supernatural thing that breaks the laws of the universe. Anyone can do this. There's no special requirements. There are obstacles. The only real
Yeah,
obstacles are, from what I can understand, are fear. A lot of people, this freaks them out. Ignorance. People have no idea they could do it. Laziness. They're not willing to try. Or perhaps uh, laziness, just not putting the effort forth.
yeah,
uh, Skeptical. They don't think they can do it. So there's just a few obstacles that are preventing people from doing it.
yeah. And I can sense some of those in myself. So certainly, maybe the fear side a little bit.
The safest sleeping, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
it's really disconcerting at first. I remember doing it early
Mm,
on, and there's telephone wires around the house, and I always fly around them because
mm,
you have a tendency to avoid objects.
yeah.
And I read about someone who's like, no, you can just fly through them. I'm like, well, okay, fine. And I came upon one. I'm like, I'm gonna do this. And I was nervous because these are electrical wires, but I flew right through them, and it went zzz, and I saw a flash of light. I'm like, whoa, that scared me. Now I've done it many times. But yeah, you're not physical. It's not dangerous.
Yeah.
You're already doing it. It's as safe as sleeping.
Yeah. I kind of I kind of believe you, but I do know that a lot of our fears aren't something they aren't real fears. They're creations of our own mind. So we are thwarted by our own fears often. We get in our own way, don't we? A lot in life. But
Again, it is an
I,
emotional body. So when you pop
yeah,
out, you can
yeah.
create your own monsters and they'll chase you around. So,
Yeah, yeah. But one bit is I haven't actually talked about this on the podcast, but I did have an experience a while ago. I think it wasn't last year, it was the year before. I did try the ayahuasca, um, and that that was probably the closest I've come to an out of body experience in the sense that I was in another realm and I did it. And this reality became the dream world. If I opened my eyes, I would look at the world that is around me, and that would feel like the dream world. Whereas then I'll close my eyes and I'll be back in what would was felt more like the real world. Um, and without going too much into detail, there was a moment when I did feel like I lost control of the experience, and that was the thing that was I was worried about the most about it. So um, that might be one of the reasons, that kind of fear of losing control. You want to be in control of the whole of the outer body experience and be able to control when you come back. Although it sounds like it come back when you don't want to sometimes.
That's one of the reasons I don't recommend ayahuasca or DMT
Mm,
or all of these because I am not convinced they're producing a genuine OBE. I don't even recommend the HemiSync tapes from the Gateway Institute, which I tried
mm,
briefly, and it felt like it was forcing the experience. I think it's best if it unfolds naturally,
hmm
because when you're doing this through meditation, you are in control. The trick is staying out because you will get pulled back in very easily,
mm,
but you have full control. And I've researched and interviewed people who use drugs or other techniques, and I don't recommend it. I think the best
mm,
way is to do it naturally because it unfolds in a way that you can do it step by step and really get a handle on it and learn how to first get out of body, then control your emotions, then learn how
mm,
to see and how to move. And then from there, you start setting intentions and you can go to the other side and visit deceased loved ones. You can talk to spirit guides, visit with enlightened masters, people who are fully enlightened. It's a humbling experience, but well worth it. Learn, did I mention past lives? You can learn
mm,
about your past lives. But visit healing temples or the Akashic records or places of learning where you go to basic classes to learn how to do telepathy or telekinesis or all of these things that we call, supernatural abilities. On the other side, they're not considered supernatural at all. Everybody flies there. Everyone who's, clicking to it. There are lower realms where people aren't quite sure what's going on. And I've explored those too, all the way down to what we would call the hellish realms.
mhm.
I've
Yeah.
explored those because I became really curious after I got, good enough at it to do it. But yeah, you cross over earthbound souls, you can do that. The stuff you can do. To me, the most fun part is visiting deceased loved ones because it's such a difficult experience when you lose somebody. It's,
hmm
crippling grief. People, you absolutely can't get out of bed. You're so devastated.
Yeah.
And a couple of years ago, my brother, Stephen, who I'm very close to, passed on very suddenly at age 61. And took me about 2 months to see him, which is typical. But not,
Mm,
I've done it with my nephew the very next night. To visit my dad, it took me years.
mm,
So I don't know what was going on with him, but he was busy. Still having trouble with my older brother, Jamie, but I've done it. But yeah, I called to see, I wanted to see my brother Steven so bad. Finally, I got out of body and I was lucid enough and aware enough to do it. And I set the intention. I started going higher, higher, and higher, higher up to very close to what we would call the heavenly realms, the level right below it, where it's still a bit urban. Heavenly realms are so beautiful. It's grass that glows with an inner light, and trees, and flowers, and streams, and little pathways. It's like a Japanese garden, is what it looks like, but it's all glowing with this inner light and this vitality and this vividness. The colors, the red pops out at you, and the greens and the blues, and it's so alive. I think that's the best way of putting
yeah.
that. In
Yeah.
joy and in love. So my brother's, I'm looking for him and I'm going through all these places and I'm feeling him come close. And finally I see somebody, like that's him. He's got his back to me and I rush up to him. And I'm a little confused because he's quite slender. Uh, the figure I'm seeing. And he was short and stout. He was about 5'6". I'm 5'9". He was always a little bit sensitive about that. I'd call him, no, you're my little brother. And it's like, no, I'm your older brother. It's like
Yeah.
he wanted to, I don't, he didn't have a problem with it. We would just good-naturedly kid each other.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at him, he's like 6 feet tall, 6 feet two. I'm like, Steven. And he looked 19. And his hair, had lost his hair, and his hair was down to his shoulders,
Mhm.
white blonde. He had blonde hair, blue eyes, and he looked different. I'm like, Steven, look at you. Oh my
Mhm.
God. And
Wow.
he was still a little disoriented. Because I asked him, I'm like, so, how are you doing? He's like, I'm fine. I'm like, have you seen Mom? And he's like, no, I haven't. I'm like, have you seen Dad? He says, no, not yet. I'm like, have you seen Jamie? Because these are all the people who preceded him in death. He's like, no, I haven't. So now I'm like, oh my God, I'm not really expecting these answers because I expected an immediate reunion.
Mhm.
Uh, but then we talked a little bit and he's showing me around and he says, I have a message for you. And he started mumbling. I'm like, what? I can't hear you. And he mumbled again. I'm like, Stephen, I'm not getting what you're saying. And he put his head up against mine and he said, tell Suzanne, that's his wife, I love her. And tell her this. And he gave me the most embarrassing personal message I've ever heard from anybody. I'm like,
Right.
Steve, you can't tell her that. It's very intimate, right?
Right.
He's like, tell her, she'll understand. Okay. It pulled me back because it was so personal. Like,
Yeah.
see, I mean, we could discuss anything, but this was like off the charts. Like, okay,
Yeah.
Stephen, I will try. And I did. And she laughed her butt off because it was so him. It's like, yeah, that's him. That's true.
Oh wow.
But it
Another
was really,
verification.
yeah. And I later saw him, and he was in the heavenly realms, and he's flying around. He was so happy. His cheeks were rosy. He was young. He was full of vitality. We flew around chasing each other and having a good time. So he's okay now. But
Yeah.
yeah, you get to visit your deceased loved ones, and that alone is worth the price of admission.
Yeah. Amazing. Have you tried to go into the future much or look into the future? For example, we mentioned the US election. I wonder if you've tried to see what might happen. Although I guess what might happen is still probabilistic, whatever you experience.
I've never really purposefully made that intention because what would started happening immediately was I started having precognition. And this would usually come in the form of a dream that would occur, simultaneously with the out of body experience. I would be out of body and I'd come back and I would remember a dream and it would come true. It happened over and over again, not every time, but as often as not. And these were often little trivial events like someone at work getting a haircut or a shipwreck occurring on TV. I love shipwrecks. Anything that caught my attention would usually be something I'd be interested in. Anything involving baby animals or something. I once had a dream after coming back with an out-of-body experience about a man being attacked and killed by his pet goat. I'm like, this can't happen. No, how would this ever occur? But it had that flavor that I'd come to recognize of precognition. Turned on the TV, and sure enough, a man had been abusing his goat and it killed him. It ran up and
Oh gosh.
smacked him in the head, and he's done. So that a
Wow.
lot of precognition. I never really had to look for it, but it happened a lot. And it was sometimes difficult to deal with. Like once I dreamt that my sister's boyfriend, who was not the greatest fit for her, stole somebody's wallet. It's this green and yellow, ugly Velcro wallet. And I came back, to Earth and was hanging out with him. And he pulled out the wallet and said, look, I found this wallet. I looked at him. And I came this close to saying, no, you didn't. You stole that. But it wasn't my place. I didn't feel like it was. But I knew that he was not telling the truth because you start to experience telepathy as well. to a certain extent. People are thinking one thing and saying another. And they'd
Hmm.
be talking to me like at work, and it would come out all garbled. I couldn't understand what they were saying because they were thinking something else.
Yeah, I've experienced that kind of telepathy, that weird feeling of some thought that comes into your head, and then somebody will mention that same thing, and it'd be quite a different
Yeah.
thing to the conversation that you knew this that
And
there's
I'll get
a sign of
premonitions too.
yeah, yeah.
All kinds of like, don't park there, you'll get a ticket. Didn't listen, got a ticket. I looked for signs, there was no sign. Turned out there was a sign, it was hidden by a tree.
Actually, I
The
got
best
one the other
example,
day. My wife was so we put something in the oven to cook, and it was in the pan. And when I opened it up, obviously I had to get the oven glove to get it out, and I had this premonition of a hand touching it and burning. And I put it on the stove, and then my wife came in, and just before she grabbed it, I was like, my premonition, like, stop, stop. But that she touched it before. Unfortunately, I couldn't stop her. But there was a premonition whilst I got the thing out that something was going to happen with touching it. Maybe it was just general fear of that happening, and maybe there wasn't a premonition, but at the same time, it could have been. So,
yeah, well, it's usually something that will affect you personally, so
mm,
that makes sense. But I
mm,
remember one time I'm going to the bank to withdraw some money from the teller, the little
mm,
ATM. And it's a couple of blocks away. And as I'm driving there, I started to get this image of this gentleman who was really tall, wearing a leather vest, covered with tattoos, real long hair, and he's whipping it around like a maniac. And I dismissed it, but it kept coming back and it was like clouding my vision. I'm like, I'm trying to drive here, and I keep seeing this guy. This is really weird. And I'm like, oh no. If I see, because I started to see where the environment around him, I'm like, that's where I'm going. And I'm like, if I come around this corner and I see this guy, I am not going to that ready teller. I'm not going to do it because this was a dangerous man. That was the feeling I was getting. And I came around that corner into the parking lot and turned to the left. And there he was. He's standing right in front of the ready teller and he's whipping his hair. I'm like, oh my gosh. Because that's so vivid and specific that this is not something you could like just randomly think.
mm.
I've never seen anyone there standing there waiting for someone to drive up.
Yeah.
Or so you can bet I did not drive up to there
Hmm.
uh,
Okay.
until he left.
Yeah.
I wish he
Yeah.
did, but yeah,
Wow.
precognition. But I've never looked for that. I've searched for the past
Hmm.
with varying degrees of success, but
Hmm.
never really specifically like looking for lottery numbers or
Hmm.
who's going to win the election. But sometimes, I mean, if you put your mind to it, like I remember the World Series was going on, and it instantly came to my head that there's going to be two teams, and they're both animals. I think, or no, one's an animal. I forget, but like the one that's an animal is going to win. And it did. They did. I know that's kind of general, but
Mm.
I'm really into sports, and that's what came to me when I put my mind to it, and it turned out to be accurate.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Um, might turn to the actual techniques for people who might want to get more involved with it, with the experience. So what do you do when you want to start? Do you lie down in your bed? Do you sit? What sort of posture do you have? Do you listen to any music? What's your most common way of starting the experience?
Well, you can do it lying down, sitting. There are people who can do it while they're awake, by the way, walking around. That's very advanced.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, some of the saints talk about actually bilocating and having two bodies, essentially. I mean, the things you can do are off the charts advanced with this. And music can help. You want to find the technique that works best for you because there are varying ways of doing this. I think it's important to reiterate this is safe. You're not going to get locked out or lost or possessed or anything like this. And again, the only real obstacles are fear and skepticism and ignorance and laziness.
Mhm.
The benefits are amazing because you basically triple or well, and you increase your life experience by 1/3 because we're unconscious for basically 1/3 of our lives. You learn your purpose for life, you learn all about yourself, you overcome all these fears of death. Uh, you get to visit deceased loved ones, you can actually heal yourself of physical illness. So I just want to put that forth, to encourage people. There are some real
Mhm.
benefits to this.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I was going to ask you about
but
that. Yeah.
uh, How it's done is actually really easy. First trick is just dream recall. Really want to work on remembering what's happening at night. Keep a dream book, write down every dream you can, meditate, and just try real hard to remember what's going on at night.
Mhm.
Another very important technique is something you can do during your waking hours, and it's very effective if you do it with discipline. And I'm going to underline that because if you're not doing it, it's not going to work. It's not enough to know about it.
Mhm.
That is critical thinking and reality testing.
Yeah.
You want to ask yourself, preferably at least 3 times a day, but in any regular fashion, could I be out of body right now? Could
Mhm.
this possibly be a dream?
Mhm.
And test it. Because if you're out of body, you can fly. So try to fly.
Mhm.
Or, maybe you're at work, you can't really do that. Lift up an object, whatever it might be. Here's a clothespin. I just happen to have throw it up in the air. See if it
Yeah.
floats. See if it reacts in any way that's disobeying the laws of the third dimension. Or try to poke your finger through your wall or desk or
Mhm.
chair.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because what'll happen is you'll jump up and you'll be floating, or your finger will go right through the wall, or you
Yeah.
know something along
Is
these
that something
lines.
you were doing at the early stages, or was that something you've kind
No,
of learned
I did
after?
not know
No,
that trick.
no.
That was something I learned later, but
Yeah,
it
exactly. Yeah.
works
Yeah.
and it's very effective because I have done it. And what usually happens is I'll find that I'm actually floating above my bed in my room, or sometimes I'm on the other side already. So that works. But the real technique is what you do is you physically relax. Go to bed an hour earlier, sleep an hour later, and this will increase your chances greatly. And physically relax for at least 20 minutes. It took me that long initially. Now I can do it pretty quickly because I've learned to just let go. But you want to relax to the point where you start to not quite realize where your body is. Where's your arm? Where's your leg? You want to start to feel maybe heaviness or lightness,
Hmm.
numbness or tingling, movement. Ultimately, you're hoping to feel the vibratory state. But this is a difficult step for people because, we go to bed and we're grinding our teeth and we're clenching our fists and we're tossing and turning. So it can take, relaxing is not as easy as it might sound.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
really work hard on that by just going through your muscle groups and, doing whatever it takes to relax. And equally as important is to mentally relax. And this is a real important step because this is what dreams are. We have a running stream of consciousness at all times.
Yeah. The monkey
And it's
mind, I
got,
call it.
yeah, and it's multi-layered because
Mm.
you're singing that song you heard. It's right there. And above that is all the things you've procrastinated. And above that is that movie you just saw. And above that is, the argument you just had or the
Mm.
things you got to do at
Your to-do
work.
list. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got all these, it's layered and
Hmm.
it's flowing through your mind at all times. And then you go to bed and you dive into that thought stream and you create a hallucinatory experience of dreams. That's what dreams are, is your stream of consciousness, but it's now audible and it's now visual. So what you want to do is step away from that. Don't try to dam it up. Don't try to, stop it, which you can do once you progress. But initially, I think the best thing to do is just step away from it, look at it, and let it go. And you want to get to the point where you start seeing images. You can hear voices, essentially. You start to just look at it and distance yourself from it a little bit to the point where it at least quiets down a little bit.
Hmm.
This was a hard step for me because I relax and physically relax. And then I'd work on that, and a big brass band would start playing, with trombones I mean, and then I just go through all these layers of thoughts. I'm like, I cannot get away from this. Uh, and it took a lot of work to just step back and ignore it and kind of you can do mantras, perhaps, om, or say the word love over and over again, or focus on a sound or a color or anything. This water, rain, just to pull you away from this constant stream of thought. So that's the second step. So now you're physically relaxed and you're somewhat mentally calm.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, then you're primed, you're ready. All you want to do at this point is visualizations and affirmations. Now, affirmations are basically, I'm going to go out of body tonight. It's an intention, is what it is. You want to set the intention to remember and to go out of body. So you say to yourself,
Yeah.
I'm out of body now, or I'm going out of body. I'm going to remember everything that happens. I am setting the intention to have an out of body experience and let that go. Because, a watched pot never boils. If you cling to anything, it's not going to work. You want to set the intention and ride it, let it go. And then you do the visualizations. And this is really effective. And there's 50 or 100 of them that are really good. And I've done pretty much all of them. For me, the one that worked best initially was just rolling out of bed, just pretending you're getting out of bed. Another really effective one was to run in place, or not run in place, but imagine yourself running down a pathway, rather, jogging down a
Hmm.
nature pathway, or on the beach, or anything, or going into an elevator and it goes up, or an escalator. Another really good one was being on the bow of a boat and just imagine yourself on a bow of a boat and it's riding the waves up and down because it lifts you out of your body. And then you
Mm.
settle back and it lifts you out.
I get
One that's
seasick
so
though.
anything with
I've heard of
movement.
the rope as well. Imagine a rope above you and try and grab it or something
Yeah,
like that.
I did
Mm.
that, and I'm reaching up, and I'm like, oh, my rope was a pole. I'm like, wow,
Mm.
look at that, and
Mm.
I pulled myself out, and pop, it worked.
Mhm.
One was
Yeah.
like, well, imagine yourself jumping off a cliff. Suddenly, I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. I'm like, well, this is a little scary. I'm not sure I'd recommend this for beginners, but it worked.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
And
holding
I'm
balloons, that
yeah.
works.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
anything involving movement, a swing set, and another. If that's not your thing, imagine your backyard or someplace you're not at, right? Don't imagine your bedroom because you're in it. Your living room is kind of close, but it might work. Someplace you know well. And just visualize it until it starts to manifest around you and you walk into it. And you're like, oh my gosh, there is a danger of kind of walking into a lucid dream. But if you think you're dreaming and you're awake, what you want to do then is say, all illusion end. I got this advice from a spirit, actually. I was out of body and I'm like, is this a dream? All illusion go away, all illusion go. And I said, no, 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 no. This person came up to me and says, just say all illusion end. And you, because I've done this before, and all of a sudden half the stuff around you starts going and disappearing. And you realize, what's real and what's not. It's very cool. But these
Yeah.
techniques work. And another one, especially for beginners, and if you've just lost a loved one or have a loved one on the other side, you simply go to bed and you focus on them. Remember their face. Remember their voice. Imagine their voice calling to you. Call to them.
Mhm.
Appeal to your spirit guides too if you want. But I call this the love bridge because it works so well. They will assist you. I mean, you might even feel them grab your hand and pull you out of body. I've had this experience. But ultimately, what will probably happen is you'll sit up in bed, very much like I was describing at the beginning of this interview with my
Mhm.
mom coming into the room. They'll walk into the room and you will see them. And you're like, oh my God. And boom, you're there. You're out of body. For a lot of beginners, you might just wake up already out of body. I had a lot of that. So don't expect to be like just laying there and lifting out of body necessarily the first time. Some people have done this the first time they've tried it. Others, there can be a steep learning curve, but it's
Mm.
absolutely doable. And the amount of effort you put forth will correspond directly to how successful you are.
Mhm.
So if you meditate 2 hours a day, it's going to happen fast. Very much like learning a computer language or a musical instrument or learning to ride a bike. You're on training
Yeah.
wheels and suddenly you remove them and then you're free and you're
Well, well, I'm a developer, so that should help. Um, do you feel like there's any effects that we should be aware of from things like alcohol, caffeine, exercise, TV. How do these things, if done beforehand, might affect it?
Yeah, it can affect you. There's a number of things that can slow your progress. For example, if your life is overwhelmed with negativity, you're going to have a hard time with this. So what I would recommend for people who really want to do this is face your fears. If you have problems with greed, work through it, or lust, or
Mm,
anger. Those
yeah.
are big ones, or depression. Because you're good, out of body is a great place to work through these issues. Don't get me wrong. You can absolutely do it. But anything that takes your attention is going to steal your consciousness, and it's all about consciousness. So if you're watching a lot of scary movies right before bed, you're probably going to have a little bit more of a hard time because you dealing with this.
Mm,
I've done it under the influence of alcohol. It's highly not recommended. I don't drink anymore. I never really was a heavy drinker, but I've certainly tried it, alcohol and trying to do this under the influence of alcohol. And I did it, but it wasn't as good and it wasn't as easy. Exercise is a good thing, actually, because that tires you out. So if you want to work out right before bed, I would recommend that. And there are little tiny techniques you can do. You can turn your, because a lot of people just keep falling asleep. And then I wake up next morning and it's done. And I was meditating. Well, sleep with your head at the foot of your bed and your feet at the head of your bed. And this will make you sleep a little bit more lightly. And it disorients you in a way enough, or like it's just a weird little technique that sometimes works. Or
mhm.
drink too much water so that you have to wake up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom and come back. If you can wake up in the middle of the night and do some activity for 10 or 20 minutes and then go back, that's a really good technique. There's little clues, little things you can do uh, that
So
make it,
you're saying going to the toilet and then coming back and then going through the state of trying to relax. Obviously, relax a lot quicker then. But if you can
yeah,
try and do it then, it's a lot
that's
easier.
often what would happen for me because, I'd wake up at around 4 or 5 a.m. to go to the bathroom. And by then, I don't even need to do the relaxation techniques because you're so relaxed. I don't know if you've ever done a hot tub, but if you've been in a hot tub for, an hour and you come out, you're just, wow,
Mm.
you're so relaxed.
Oh
That's the
yeah.
kind of feeling you want to get to because relaxation is ultimately the key. But
Mm.
at some point, you got to stop paying attention to your body and your thoughts, and you turn 180 degrees and just set the intention and let go. Just walk away from your body. And I know that sounds simple, but it is. It's that simple.
Mm.
Uh, and I'm not at the point where I can do this quote at will, where I can just lay down. I'm like, I'm gonna have one, and here it goes. But if I lay down, and I absolutely have to have one. I can, and I still have them once a week, once or twice a month on the outside. But shoot, you can do it daily if you. There was a time I was just walking on the other side. I was walking on a cloud when I was in the third dimension because you come away, for me, full of energy. Like,
Mm.
wow, you can be awake all night long and you come back and you're not tired. I just can't recommend it enough. I wish people would try this. It would change your life.
Mm. Yeah. How do you deal with just the itches and external noises and things that just can distract you from the process?
As best as you can. I lived in a household with a lot of people in it. We were a family of eight. My mom had passed, so she was gone, but most of my siblings had friends, and that house was a thin little house. It was
Mm.
1,200 square feet. I shared a room till I was pretty much 19 or 20 with my sisters or brothers or what have you. So I didn't have a whole lot of privacy and a whole lot of quiet time.
Mm.
But you can meditate. I do remember one time I was meditating, and my sister barged into my room. She's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm meditating." She said, "I've been banging on the door for the last 30 seconds." I did not hear her. I was in such a deep meditation that I completely blocked it out.
Mm.
She's like, you had to have heard me. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I didn't. I was meditating.
Yeah.
So it's
Uh,
possible to do anywhere. And yeah, you can sit up in an easy chair and just do it that way. I've done it from every position, on my side, on my back, curled up like a hamster, on my stomach. I sleep on my side, so that works best for me.
yeah.
But if you fall asleep instantly, try laying on your back because that makes it harder to, for me, that worked really well. I could relax to the point where I could do it and I wouldn't fall asleep.
Okay. Uh, do you think? I guess we've talked about last life after death for the moment. Do you do you think the place is a happy place that you've been at? It seems like a happy place, but you said there's heavenly realms and there's darker realms. But the
Um,
people that you've met and on the other side, are they happy?
most are. I'd say the vast majority of people are not going to have any problem. They're going to cross to what I would call the heavenly realms. I'm not a religious guy. I was raised without religion. My parents rejected it.
Hmm.
Uh, so I never really had that, which I'm kind of thankful for because it made it easier for me to understand the difference between faith and belief and knowledge. And yeah, most people are going to go to a place that's very garden-like, very paradise-like, very natural, very pastoral, with fields and grass and trees and flowers, and the air sparkles. It's got this divine light that emanates from everything. You're embraced in love. God is a real thing, source, call all that is, call it what you want. The spirit that moves through all things. I love all the terms that people use in different cultures because they're all accurate and you're embraced in it and you are a part of it. So
Hmm.
that would be what I would call the heavenly realms. And it goes up from there to very energetic dimensions that are indescribably beautiful and, how would I say, almost abstract. It's not, it's almost impossible to describe in words because it's energetic. There are
Hmm.
lower realms, like the one right below the heavenly realms. This is my experience, and certainly is reflected in the books. It's very urban. uh, it's just like this one right below the heavenly realms would be this like hotel, a really nice hotel, where people are just hanging out in these tables and rooms, and there are marble floors and plants and fountains. It's nice. This is where I found some of my deceased loved ones. Below that, it gets to like a cheap mall, you know, uh, dirty
Hmm.
room, a dirty apartment, urban street in LA that's a little dark. It's dark. And there are some people there who are having problems emotionally. They might not realize they're dead. They can't fly, but it goes lower and lower to where it's dark. And there are people there who are very angry, very self-absorbed, very lost in some emotion
Hmm.
of depression or anxiety or fear or something along those lines, lust even, and very hard to get their attention. They're very hard to communicate with. They can be quite hostile. Uh, my friend Roger died of alcoholism, and he's a wonderful guy, very generous, very intelligent, but just could not overcome his addiction. And he passed on from it. And I thought, well, I'm going to see him. I know it because I always do. And it was about 2 weeks in that I went out of body and I was taken to him. And he was in what I would definitely call a low hellish realm, which was pitch black. He was screaming in
Hmm.
agony and
Gosh.
fear and depression. And all he could say is, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready. What's happening? Help, help, help. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Roger. I was so overcome with love and despair. I mean, could you feel what they're feeling? Empathy is a thing and it's hugely powerful on the other side. You feel and think together. So his despair washed over me and that pulled me back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. And I contacted, my family, his friends, his family. I'm like, we need to pray for Roger. We need, because he's having a hard time. He's not okay. And I prayed my guts out, and Again, I'm not religious, but this is really effective. Thoughts you learn are things. On the other side, you think something and it will manifest if you're in the right dimension. Uh, and so everything come full color around you when you think it. And so, what I'm trying to say is prayer is effective. And there's been studies on this, actually.
Hmm.
So I was doing that and encouraging others. And I went out and I looked for him and I found him. And he was on a couple of levels up, again in this urban, very city-like scape. And he was behind a barrier, which I found interesting because you hear about this in near-death experiences where people go to see their relatives and you can't get to them. They're behind a barrier. And I couldn't get to him. But he started speaking to me verbally in my mind, telepathically, but out loud. He said, Preston, I love you. And thank you for all the love bombs. I'm like, Roger, I'm so glad you're doing better. You're welcome. And I wanted to talk more, but there was an unsavory uh, entity, another guy who was not okay and was angry, very angry, and tried to attack me. And he manifested a car and tried to run me over. And I levitated because, I've learned how to do that. He couldn't do that. That made him so angry. And he chased me for, 5, 10 minutes. I'm like, finally, I'm out of there. I left. And I later saw Roger again, and he was in a hospital on the other side in the garden realms. There are recovery centers there where people can go to orient themselves. And he was surrounded by people who were taking care of him. And I was told that, no, you can't really see him now. There he is, but he's busy. We're taking care of him. So you don't need to worry. He's fine.
Hmm.
So that was my experience with my friend Roger.
Hmm. Wow. And I think that's a good closing story of your experiences that would be good to end on. So, Ashley, let's first say how do people reach you, and maybe tell us a little bit about what's going on in the next steps.
Yeah. I'm pretty easy to reach on social media. I do have a website. Just punch my name in, it'll take you there. It's
Mhm.
prestondennett.weebly.com. And you can also reach me through email. I'll send you a little guide on how to do this. You just follow these steps. My email is prestonufo@gmail.com. I give this out freely because it's so important people learn how to do this. But yeah, I have a YouTube channel where I put out my research, including an episode on all my experiences. I have, of course, the book Out of Body Exploring. A number of books are available on Amazon. I do a podcast each Monday evening with Dolly Saffron, who I mentioned.
Mhm.
It's called The Light Gate, and that airs from 8 to 10 Eastern. We're moving to a new time in the beginning of July. So it's 8 to 10. Now it's 9 to 11, but 8 to 10 is when it's going to be. And yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, I'm there, easy to find. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show, Joe. I love this
Yes.
subject. I could talk about it for hours.
Yeah, it's been a real wealth of stories you've got, an eclectic mix of well, all sorts of things. And it's not just that, but also all the stories you had last time on all the experiences that you've heard about when writing all your books. So yeah, it's a real wealth there, and I'm really glad to have had you on. So thank you very much. And like to do it another time and we can talk some more. So for now, thank you very much.
Pleasure and an honor. Thank you.